quadruple of this carbon tax, and it's wrong.
Resuming debate, reprise de débat. The other member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's an honor to rise in this place to speak to Bill C-34. And this bill has been before the House for some time. I must state my great regret that time allocation has been applied to this bill before any member of the Green Party has been allowed to speak to it. Now, you know, of course, and I speak of the collective you and not directly to you, Madam Speaker, people know that when someone rises on the government side and says we've had 20 speakers, we've had 20 witnesses and so on, it sounds exhaustive, but the rules in this place are intended to allow a proper debate of every bill that involves all members with an interest in it. Members will know that I've long decried, as was earlier mentioned, this debate, the use of written speeches that allow more members to speak to a bill that may have an actual strong interest or background in the subject matter. But I think in this case, we have the reverse. We have a really important piece of legislation. It got all the way through second reading without any speakers from my party. And then it got into the committee where we're not allowed to be members, and then amendments were made. And here we are at report stage already, and I have a lot of concerns. So, Madam Speaker, without further pause to reflect on regret that this is the first time I've been given a speaking opportunity in this place, let me speak to the Investment Canada Act and to the revisions that are made in Bill C-34. It is very, very important that we, in 2023, take a new lens and look at what we mean by foreign investments of concern, what it means around national security and national sovereignty. I am concerned that the bill leaves cabinet decision-making more as a discretionary matter, that there will not have to be a cabinet decision unless there's a recommendation from the minister. Triggering a foreign investment review has never been easy in this country. Let me just reflect for a moment on two specific cases. I think one will be better with the changes made under C-34, but for the other, I hate to say that even at this late hour, I'm not certain that this bill will improve the situation on a more complicated matter. So the first one, let me just speak to, and it was a few years ago that that a takeover was proposed for one of Canada's largest engineering firms, Aecon. It had gone quite far. It was reported in the business pages that Aecon was to be purchased by, and it was approved by the Aecon shareholders, a purchase of by a People's Republic of China company, CCCI. And it was moving along without concern. Now, it was in 2018 that I was the first member of Parliament to raise on the floor of the House of Commons a concern that didn't we need a national security review before one of the largest engineering companies in Canada became the property of a company based in the People's Republic of China. It's particularly been a concern of mine for some time because it was back in the Harper years that a decision was taken by cabinet alone with no vote. I want to repeat this because for new members of Parliament, it will be shocking to them. We never had a vote in the House of Commons on approval of the Foreign Investment Protection and Promotion Agreement, otherwise known as a FIPA, between the People's Republic of China and Canada, which gives corporations and state-owned enterprises from within the People's Republic of China superior rights to, if they were a Canadian company, to complain of changes made by regulation or court decision or any number of matters where a corporation feels that its expectation of profits have been somehow reduced. Originally emerged as an investor-state provision, first emerged in Chapter 11 of NAFTA, back in the day when it was NAFTA. Now that it's CUSMA, ironically, this investor-state provision has been removed from CUSMA, but it's been transplanted in bilateral trade agreements and they're not even trade agreements, as in the case of the FIPA with China. There's no trade deal between the People's Republic of China and Canada. But thanks to former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, there are investment protections for corporations from the People's Republic of China, which Canadian corporations can't access. And even worse, the FIPA with China keeps any complaints from the People's Republic of China or their state-owned enterprises completely secret. Complaint process is secret. We would only find out about it if it went to the end to an actual arbitration. That would be reported. I don't have time in the time I have to speak to C34 to fully explain why we have to have a very different lens when looking at takeover of Canadian enterprises by any foreign entity, if that foreign entity has the benefit of an investor protection agreement, which gives that corporation superior rights to a domestic Canadian corporation. It's very concerning. Now, fortunately, it took, I think I had to raise it 2 or 3 times in the House before a few other MPs began to say they were also concerned about AECON. And in the end, the minister triggered a foreign national security review, and the decision, and it was turned down. The decision was made by the government of Canada, I think appropriately, to stop the takeover of AECON by a corporation in the People's Republic of China. More complicated and recent is the takeover of virtually all of Canada's pulp and paper production by a corporation that is owned by one man. It's not a limited corporation. It doesn't appear on the stock exchanges of any country. The name of this corporation is Paper Excellence. It's owned by one human being, one sole person who's a billionaire from Indonesia. Now, some of the media coverage, and thank goodness there's been intensive and quite belated. Basically, Paper Excellence had already bought up Domtar, already bought up Catalyst Paper, already bought up Resolute Paper, and having had one first purchase, Northern Pulp of Pictou, Nova Scotia. Suddenly, Paper Excellence, which has a registered headquarters in Vancouver, but is no more Canadian than the Indonesian billionaire who owns it, has bought up virtually all of the pulp and paper processing across Canada. Now, this is alarming. Is it a national security threat? No, the question was never asked. No one really saw it coming. It's only from the media investigations subsequent to this Indonesian billionaire-owned enterprise called Paper Excellence becoming the owner of all the pulp and paper mills. Resolute Paper, avec un grand impact.
This had a big impact in Quebec. It was so important, and there was so much concern. Members here in the bloc were concerned because Resolute Paper was an important player in paper mills in Quebec.
In British Columbia, where Catalyst Paper was based, where the mill in Crofton, the mill in Powell River were purchased now initially from Catalyst Paper and suddenly become owned by a very mysterious Indonesian billionaire. Should this have had a review? Well, media coverage has managed to unearth that the buying spree of Paper Excellence was likely, and we don't know for sure, financed by loans from the State Investment Bank of the People's Republic of China. So we don't know. Are Paper Excellence's mills, do they have access to the FIPA with China to complain if we make changes in any way to the way in which either provincial changes from Quebec or British Columbia, where these mills are based? They would have access to FIPA if they can make the case that they are a People's Republic of China operation. We don't know that this is investment from the People's Republic of China. I think that even with the changes made in C-34, I am not reassured that we would have caught what was going on with Paper Excellence. Would we have had an opportunity to have a foreign investment review before the single Indonesian billionaire began buying up all our pulp and paper mills? I wish I'd had an opportunity in committee. I wish I'd had an opportunity to be in debate at second reading. I know the honorable member for Timmins, James Bay, raised some of these issues at the time. He's also concerned about paper excellence. But with the time remaining, Madam Speaker, I'll say I think it's unfortunate that we have a time allocation now and these issues are rushed. It's unfortunate we won't adequately debate the amendments that have come forward at report stage, such as the ones that I've heard mentioned by the member for South Shore St. Margaret's. I close here, Madam Speaker, and hope we haven't missed too much.
Comments? The Honourable Government Deputy House Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I certainly always enjoy listening to the comments from the member from Saanich Gulf Islands. She must admit, though, that she is aware of the fact that there are a lot of procedural games that go on in the House, which puts the government in a position that in order to be able to do anything, unfortunately, the reality is that time allocation has to be brought in on certain bills. I think of the Canada Free Trade agreement with Ukraine. You know, here we have a bill that every time it's scheduled to come up, Conservatives are putting on a concurrence motion that's preventing us from being able to do that. So if we left it to the Conservatives to always dictate, we would never get to final. And I know Conservatives are heckling me right now. We're not even discussing that bill. But we would never even get to the opportunity to pass that very important piece of legislation for Ukraine. I'm wondering if she can, at least acknowledge the fact that she understands the position that we're in and that we have to do this from time to time.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks, my honourable colleague from Kingston and the Islands. Of course, I empathize. You must say that I empathize, but I can't understand. I don't like our rules being abused constantly to bring in a forced closure debate to speed things along. The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands will know that I think the solution lies in applying all of our rules. And one of the rules is that in this place, it is against our rules, as they are against the rules of the Parliament of Westminster in the UK, to read a written speech. And if we didn't have written speeches handed out to members, we would have fewer speeches on every bill because fewer members of Parliament would be prepared to speak from rough notes without somebody else putting the words in their mouth. And that would speed things up. I understand and I empathize, but I plead with the government not to keep doing this because too many members are going to assume this is the way it is done. And no matter who's sitting in the Prime Minister's chair, we continue to see democracy eroded in this Parliament. Thank you, Madam
Point of order.
A point of order, the honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, due to multiple technical issues, I was unable to vote in the vote that took place after question period, and I